Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode in this series as we celebrate the life of Master Sergeant Gregory Trent. Today we have Tim Bostion. Tim was Greg's best friend. I think this is, a pivotal part. Tim was the initial person that I talked to about the story, about Greg, kind of as he knew Greg and worked with Greg, and has been really helpful to help me understand the dynamics on the team and really understand who Greg was to you, who he was on the team. I know, this isn't the easiest thing to talk about. I don't want to say I pulled you into this, but, we talked for a long time before we finally actually, settled down into this project. But, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you for taking the time, for being vulnerable, Tim, for being willing to relive this day. And to be able to celebrate the life of your friend. That's not lost on me. It's not lost on my family. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for your service. I know that sounds so weird. I serve too, but on behalf of me and my wife and my family and our production team, thank you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you did, and thank you for being willing to step up to the mic. Before we dive deep into that 2012 deployment, can you tell us and our audience a little bit about yourself?
First of all, I was just going to say thank you for having me. Once again, my name is Tim Bostion. I was a Marine Corps brat, so I was kind of brought into the service at a very young age. Born out in 29 Palms, California, and then we moved back out east to the Virginia area. And once my dad got out of the Marine Corps, we moved back to where I would grow up from, and it's right around Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Lived there for my whole life. For the majority of my life, and then found out there was nothing going on for my life there in that town, so I decided to join the Army at the good old age of 21. It took me a little bit of time to grow up and mature. So that was in 2004, and then 2006, I kind of got bored with the Army, so I decided to volunteer to go to Special Forces training, and then in 2008, I joined 3rd Special Forces Group, and went on my first deployment in 2009. After that trip with 2nd Battalion, I followed a great mentor, Paul Feisel, another legend of 3rd Group, over to 4th Battalion to a team that he was taking. And that's where I met up with Greg.
Awesome. What did you initially come in the Army? What was your initial MOS?
So I was a 25, was it a Bravo or a Fox? I was like some kind of, just basically a radio operator.
Nice.
Yeah, uniform, that's what it was.
25 uniform, yeah. How was it when you initially got to Special Forces? Was it what you thought it would be?
So the funny thing about that, so when I was going through the schoolhouse to become a 25 uniform, my first sergeant, he was a Ranger, that guy, and he was also a Green Beret. I hated the training, so he was like, here's what you need to do. Once you become a specialist, put in your volunteer packet, become a Special Forces soldier. So I get to there, and I was instantly just surrounded by like-minded people, professional cadre, all around, that I would come back to see again as a Green Beret on a team in 3rd Special Forces Group.
That's awesome. What was the culture like at 3rd Group?
So during that time when I first got there, we were hot and heavy in the GWAT, so it was like 6 months on, 6 months off. So it was very like warriorish mentality there. And it was like you got there, you shut up, you listened to what these guys had to say about war, because they were going to teach you everything you needed to know that you didn't learn in the schoolhouse to survive.
So my understanding from 4th Battalion, I think it got stood up sometime around 2011. Were you one of the original plank holders from 3424?
No, I wasn't. So I did get there. Actually, I got there in 2009, but got the blessing in 2011 to be able to go overseas. So I came from 2nd Battalion after a trip to Afghanistan in 2009 with the commando mission, and then I followed my Paul Feisel over there to 4th Battalion. So it was pretty close to the beginning of 2010 when I got there.
Okay. Yeah. How did you end up on 3424?
Because of Paul.
Yeah.
He was going there. I served with him in that 2009 trip, and he was like, hey, why don't you come over here with me?
What's your earliest memory of meeting Greg?
So it had been a little fuzzy there, but like 2009-ish, like that fall probably. just getting over there, and it was kind of, we were very similar. We liked to have fun, but we were also serious. Like when work needed to get done, you know, we were down there working, but when there was no work to be done, you know, we were playing pranks, telling jokes. And that's kind of like my first memory of him. He was kind of like, I found the brother I never had, you know, because I was telling you earlier, like, you know, I was the only child. And I see it now, like with my kids, like how like my 3-year-old looks up to that 11-year-old, his big brother, and like wants to be like him and just do everything like he does. In his eyes, he's perfect, right? And that's kind of how I saw Greg.
So you guys knew each other before you guys were ever on the same ODA?
No, we didn't. But then like we started going back, you know, like when you meet someone in the Army, like, hey, when did you graduate the Q course, trying to see if we crossed paths, but it never happened until that day.
Imagine starting at the line, heart pounding, ready to earn your place among the elite. At Titan Coaching, former Rangers, Green Berets, SOF, airmen, and law enforcement specialists stand beside you, guiding every step of your journey. From land navigation drills and brutal ruck marches to pool prep for dive school and long-distance runs, they craft a plan tailored to your goal. SFAS, Ranger School, BUDS, Delta Selection, MARSOC, or law enforcement careers, you'll master body mechanics, dial in nutrition, and build mental resilience before and after the grind. If you're serious about earning the right to wear the badge or a tab, visit TitanCoaching.com for an exclusive consult. Titan Coaching, your advantage starts here.
What was your initial thoughts of him? Like, what drew you to him?
Yeah, it's just his personality. It was just very similar to me, but also knew he been in the Army for more than, you know, I was in the Army at that point, 5 years, 6 years almost, and he had already done like half a career. And you know, you want to surround yourself with good people in life if you want to be successful, because they're going to help you out, right? And you're going to help them out along the way as well. But he was just appeared to be a great mentor to want to look up to and you know, learn how to be a soldier.
That's awesome. Was there a particular moment early in your friendship when you realized Greg was someone special or different from others that you had met in the Army?
So it had been that, I guess we'll say 2010. We were deployed to Afghanistan, and we were living together. So that's really when I really got to know him, you know, when you live with somebody. And we were pretty much, we did a lot together, you know, get chow together, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, sometimes midnight chow. And then, you know, go to the gym together, and then like we would be out there working on the trucks together. He'd help me be prepping the trucks, because as Charlie, that was my job, you know, to refit the trucks. And then I'd be helping him out with the commo stuff, since I had a commo background. But he just was able to see like the best in people, right? And pull that out of you. You know, I was never like the big guy for school. But he was like, hey, you really should go to college, Tim. So he was like, I'm going to take you down here, and we're going to get on this computer here, and you're going to sign up for college right now. And that's where I started, you know, working on my bachelor's degree. It may have took me 10 years, but I got it done, you know. So
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And here I am, yeah, you know, we're talking about, you know, now I'm working on my graduate degree. So
Yeah.
wouldn't have done that without him.
You talked about how Greg forced you to sit down and finish, I think it was like one of your SLC online courses or something.
Oh, yes.
Even like you didn't care. What did that moment reveal to you about who he was, not just as a soldier, but as a friend who'd push you to be better?
That goes, again, like him just seeing like the big picture of you. And obviously, you know, knowing the soldier thing, like if I didn't complete this, that would have been, what, a negative 1059, and my career would have been done. That was from the Army standpoint. But he was like, hey, we're not going to have fun tonight, Tim. If you do not sit down here, and I will sit down with you. And sure enough, he sat down with me for 8 hours. And we knocked out half of it that day and half the next day. That just speaks volumes of a guy's, you know, character there. He didn't have to do that. Like, he could have sat in his room, he could have went and worked out, or he could have went and did something else. But he invested time into me to help develop me as a leader, and that's how a leader's supposed to be, right? They're supposed to sacrifice their time to make sure that they're, you know, in this case, I was a subordinate, right? You know, or peer, whatever, is doing the right thing to grow, to become a better leader as well.
Yeah, I hope listeners that are listening to that, listening to you tell that story, and they're in a leadership role. I mean, this is years later and it's still impacted you. So I hope that if you're a leader out here listening to this, that you listen to a story like Greg and realize that sometimes the small things you do, may seem small to you, but they could be huge and have a huge impact on somebody. So you had deployed with Greg prior to the 2012 deployment?
Yes.
How was that deployment?
It was interesting. It was a short trip, like 4 or 5 months. We were trying to find work in and out of Bagram because we were stuck there as like a PDSS. So then our team sergeant, being the guy he was, Paul, he would always find work for us to get outside the wire, even though we weren't supposed to do that. And it took them about 3.5 months to catch on that we weren't present all the time to be PDSS because he would find us little trips to get out. But it was interesting. Like I definitely learned a lot from him during that trip. Just how to groom, because he was grooming me, right? And how to groom future Green Berets. Like I became an instructor after that 2012 trip. I went to SWIC and was teaching future Green Berets and small unit tactics and then how to be an engineer. And that way to teach that he developed in me really shined when I would start talking to the students to help groom them. I was never that guy who was going to be yelling at them because you kind of lose face value with that. It's more about making sure they understand, one, how to become a leader, because that's what you're putting into them, but also how to do their job and do it efficiently and effectively to the utmost highest standard, which is pretty close to perfection in Greg's eyes.
Yeah, that's I mean, going on a deployment, even if it's only for a couple months, you really get to know people. Like, I think some of the people that I'm still close with to the day are guys that I, spent in a foreign country because, you're away from your family, you're away from everything, and it's just, you guys in the mission. And thinking about Greg from that first deployment, what do you remember about him just as a person? Not necessarily the warrior Greg, but just as a human.
Yeah. Well, you brought up another good thing is, is when you're deployed with somebody, even if it's stateside, overseas, wherever, like, that's just something that no one will ever understand. I know it's very cliche, but that's where you really bond with people when you're you're in it. When you're not around your family and it's that guy next to you, that you have to rely on, and that's why that, is it John 15:3, I think. I don't have it memorized, but that it's very corny. I have it in my phone actually,
yeah.
But it's not corny. But John 15:13 says that greater love has no one than to lay down one's life for his friend. It's very cliche to use in this moment, but it's the truth. When you're serving out there with other guys, especially like on a 12-man ODA, like you become family. And you don't fear death. Like you're willing to sacrifice your life for the guy next to you, no matter what happens. And you're willing to be there no matter what happens. So, and that was Greg, to a T.
Was there any tough spots, or did you guys get in any, tough positions in that first deployment?
Not really. We weren't really too many tough positions. It was a bad area, but they never seemed to attack when we were there. And I'm sure it's because of our posture. When we're rolling around those gun trucks, we have 50 cal Mark 19 up top, 240, and then everybody was just switched on, ready to get after it. And it would always be after we left, and then the infantry kids that we were there helping out, that's when they would get attacked then. So it never really came towards us, that trip.
Can you tell me about a time when Greg's sense of humor or a practical joke particularly stood out to you? How important was humor in your friendship and daily life on the team?
It's pretty important. I really don't have a specific time, but you have some people who can tell jokes, right? And then some people can't. I'm one of those who can't. I like to do a lot of movie quotes, to make people laugh. Mm-hmm. Greg could tell a joke, but really the biggest thing is just his smile, man, and his laughter. That's how he lived life. Just put in the best person he could always forward. And that was just him. It was he never really complained that much. So really, I don't have like a number one joke or thing like that. It was just him, like, and who he was to the core.
Thanks for sharing that. So you guys come back off that 2010 deployment. Did you guys deploy in 3424 or were you guys on a different team?
So 3424, we deployed together in 2010 and then 2012.
So you and him were pretty salty. You guys came back from that 10 deployment, and then you guys had the rest of 10 all the way through 11 to kind of prep and prepare for the next Afghan trip. How long did it take before you guys were rolling back out to Afghanistan?
And it was about a year, probably. We were busy. Like when we come back, it's not like we're sitting around. So like we came back and he went to school to become our intel guy, and then I went to a few shooting schools, Sephardic and Sodic, and also got married in between there. So like while we were back for about a year to year and a half, like the time flew by because we're constantly training, and that's where we linked up with Tutu, who was out in Herat during that trip. So we did a lot of cross training with them, piggybacked onto their training exercises because we had gaps to fill, not for needs for the team.
Yeah, I've heard a lot, especially we've already talked to Dave, and I've talked to Chane on the phone, who was Tutu's captain. How did that dynamic, with both Dave and Chane both being West Point grads and friends as well, kind of understanding that dynamic. Were you guys pretty close to that team as well?
We did a lot of training with them, and the team room, like, you had your own team bay, right? And it was the door in there, but you could always hear Sean A. He was a few doors down, but you could always hear him laughing. And I will never forget, he just loud laugh, but like that dude loves life. And he had humor also with him. And that's kind of like, as silly as it is, that's one of the biggest things that stands out from him was just being able to always hear him down the hall. Because that was his personality. He was a big guy, bigger than life,
You and Greg were obviously close, and he was the Fox, right? So you guys did Greg was doing the intelligence preparation of the battlefield for that 2012 trip. And then you guys find out 2 weeks before you guys rip into country that, oh, you're not going to this side of the world, you're going to, this side of the world, or Afghanistan. But Greg had been there before to that area. And, Dave talked about how when Greg finding out you guys were going to Zircon Valley that, he walked outside and smoked an entire pack of cigarettes and was pretty stressed out. Did Greg ever share any conversations with you about that area?
I remember him just talking about how it's kind of like the Wild Wild West. We didn't really see that at first, but towards the end of the trip, things started falling apart there. And it is obvious to what Greg was telling us about how like it's just crazy there. Like it's just kind of hard. Like it's really hard. That dynamic's really hard to explain.
Yeah.
Because half the ALP worked for the Taliban before.
Yep.
And then now they're your cops, your ALP, whatever you want to call them, who you're kind of trusting to run this checkpoint, but like, where's their loyalties at,
Well, in that time in Afghanistan, even in that year in Afghanistan, not even just for your ODA, but for your company, but also for MARSOC, the SEALs, there was a lot of green on blue. And for those that don't know, that's when you're working with a partner force. In this case, you guys are working with the Afghans, but what was happening in Afghanistan was, the partner forces, you'd be out either on, you'd be on the base with them and they would just turn around, they start shooting Americans.
Yeah, and that's also when the Quran got burned.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, because they came to our VSP, like, I bet you there was like 1,000 or 3,000 there.
Was that the Charlie Hebdo thing? I don't remember.
I don't remember what all transpired from that or how it happened.
Yeah, that was an international event.
Yeah, and like they came to every American base then.
Hey everyone, we are excited to announce our new partnership with an awesome sponsor. When it's time to fuel my training, Alpha Country Training and Nutrition is my go-to. Founded by former Green Beret Spencer Lewis, Alpha Country crafts elite supplements to power warriors and athletes through the toughest challenges. They've got clean, effective supplements for endurance, strength, and recovery. plus apparel that actually performs. Whether you're grinding out early mornings or long miles, Alpha Country helps fuel that mission. One of their flagship products, Stay Ready Endurance, is a game changer, packed with cluster dextrin and mod carb, a premium, fast-acting, and slow-releasing carbohydrate source that keeps you fueled throughout your duration of your training. It's packed with blueberry and goji berry powders for natural antitoxin protection, has a full multivitamin blend inside, and also has electrolyte support through Himalayan pink salt and potassium. Clean, easy to digest, no bloating or heavy sugar crash that keeps you hydrated and energized during grueling workouts. Whether you're rucking in the heat, crushing high-intensity workouts, or training for Special Forces selection, this intra-workout formula prevents fatigue and keeps you in the fight. Every ingredient is hand-selected for maximum performance because Spencer learned in the field, generic supplements just don't cut it. Alpha Country's entire line is built on transparency and quality, helping you recover faster and train harder. Ready to lead by example? Go to thealphacountry.com and use Vanguard 20 for 20% off your first order. That's thealphacountry.com, code Vanguard 20 for 20% off your first order. Power up and stay fueled with Alpha Country. Your body, your community, and your country deserve it.
By 2012, you and Greg have been through a lot together. I think we were just talking about that. Training in Texas, deployments, life changes. What was it like stepping into Zerka Valley for this deployment with him, knowing you could count on him no matter what came at ODA 3424?
Let me drink water quick. So going into Zerka Valley, we were doing split team ops. So we had one team at another VSO site and then our team at the other VSO site at San Juan. And so we had 5 guys, I think it was 4 or 5 guys at one spot with an infantry uplift, and then 5 or 6 guys at the other spot. And like there was no room for error. So like you had to really be able to rely on each other. You had to be able to wear multiple hats. You know, Greg was our intel guy, but then since we were split team, he was also the team sergeant, and he was also the guy who had the most commo experience. So he was kind of like the commo guy. And yeah, I would try to help out with the limit of experience I had there. But it was just being that way, it was just a lot of relying on each other, and there was no margin for error.
You guys were running split teams, but you were co-located with Greg, right?
Yep.
So again, man, you know, you guys are in this tight-knit environment, you know, the team split. So like to your point, you know, no room for error. You know, there's just not a lot of you guys were already, you know, so the listeners know a normal ODA or a normal Green Beret team has 12 people. And I think you guys had like what, 9 or? Yeah,
9.
Yeah. So you guys were already kind of shorthanded to begin with and in a pretty tough area. I think Dave had explained when we talked to him too, that prior to going into Zerka Valley, that area was normal. They normally had 3 ODAs. I think they had, you know, one up a little bit north and then south, and then I think the other one was in Parmacon. And then by the time you guys got there, you guys are the only ODA for that area. So did you know that trip was going to be a kinetic trip?
VSO wasn't supposed to be kinetic in theory. It was supposed to be more, you know, that village stability operations, obviously. And it was supposed to be us just interacting with the villagers, trying to help them out, trying to unite them kind of, trying to put up these ALPs to stand guard for their own villages from the Taliban, basically. So in theory, it wasn't supposed to be a kinetic trip, but it can happen whenever. And obviously, you know, it was happening because the Taliban were coming and attacking the ALP, you know, I won't say regularly, but consistently.
When did you, if you remember, do you remember when you guys got in your kind of first troops in contact, or kind of what that was like?
Well, I mean, we countered numerous IEDs up to then. You know, as Charlie, that's what I got to deal with all the time. And then the first time that they had an IED was, so I had a baby during that trip, and the MARSOC guy caught, First Sergeant caught wind of it, and he was like, "What are you still doing here?" So he was like, "You need to go home." So literally the day that I flew out, May 6th, which also happened to be my birthday, you know, I'm sitting in the talk, and they're like, "Hey, you need to get out of here." So I left, and then I flew to Bagram, and then I went into the talk again, and that's when I found out like my team was troops in contact during that time. So I wasn't there, and that was really hard to deal with, because it was, that was my job as the Charlie, is to be there for the guys.
Yeah, that's a hard thing too. I think that's something else that it's hard for people to understand. The normal person who hasn't served, or especially wasn't in your situation, would think like, oh, it's more important to be back home with your kid, and that is important, right? Yeah. Like, I've talked to you. I know how important your family is to you, especially your kids. But it's also this split family. It's almost like you have two families, right? Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say the Army's your family, but the ODA, man. I mean, you've talked about it. Other people have talked about it in this series, and then also in other parts of our podcast. It's this. It really becomes this small family. I think a lot of Americans forget sometimes. We join for the bigger cause, right? For God, for country. Protect the nation. But we're really, when you deploy downrange, it's really about the dudes next to you. I was telling one of our production guys last night, who wasn't in the military, like when you're in the military, you don't really talk about politics. You might talk, religion's not a big thing, because at the end of the day, none of that really matters. It's like when the bullets start flying or a situation gets bad, like, hey, are you going to be there? And so I think, understanding and like I just wanted to expand upon that thing. I understand. Can you explain a little bit what that's like to hear, hey man, my guys are going through hell, and your heart's almost pulling too. Like, you want to be home. You obviously want to be there for your wife. I know how important your family is to you and how important your wife is, but you also like want to be there for your other family. What's that like?
So again, my wife actually put it very bluntly to me. When I was leaving, she was like, she was happy I was there, but she was also said that like, your mind wasn't here. Your body was, but your mind wasn't here. Your mind was still in Afghanistan. And she was very blunt with me with that. And and she was right. Like, I wanted to be with the guys. Like, I loved seeing my little girl. I missed her birth, but my mind was still there. And it's just hard. Like, it was hard to come home. As much as I wanted to, it was really hard to come home. Just because, like, there was guys hit an IED that day, and like, that was my job. My job was to find the IEDs. It was always myself and Mike Swenson, out there looking for them, and then we'd find them, and then we'd just blow them up. Like, when I was out there, we only hit one IED, and it's because I cleared the path to go across this wadi, and then the driver of Greg's truck actually swung it wide and went off of what I cleared. And it hit, we call it a little wheel popper, and it popped the wheel off the Mat B. But, I took a lot of pride in that. So that was my job, and not being there and my guys hitting it, like, that hit home.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. That's something a lot of people just, it's hard to understand. One of the things that you guys, have talked about, and a lot of people have come and talked about, that you guys ran split team ops. And so kind of what that means is, although you guys were a team, you guys were physically in two different locations. Did you guys run like separate missions, or was everything always together as a group where both locations would come together to work as a group?
So we would do both. Sometimes we would run our own missions and they would run theirs. And then sometimes we would come together if it was a little bit bigger or a longer movement. We would come together to go do the mission together as a team.
So, working in even a smaller capacity with Greg, I know you as the Charlie and the IED guy, I don't think you ever got stuck behind, because I know Dave had explained that sometimes they would have to leave people at the VSP site to man the radios and, do the Force Pro stuff. Did you ever stay behind?
No, I was always out there. I was the rear gunner of the truck, so I could easily dismount to go check for IDs.
So how was that like, and how did that further your relationship with Greg, being such a, not only a crucial part to the larger ODA, but also a very crucial part to Greg's split team? Yeah,
yeah, it plays into like what we were just developing there, is like we had to rely on each other, because like just to survive. And like, we couldn't fail each other. There was no room for failure because there was only 4 of us over there. And like, as a team sergeant, as I matured in my career, I realized how having a good group of guys makes you successful as a leader. And like at a young age, because a lot of us were staff sergeants then, like we just had to step it up and become mature. and be people that he could rely on, even if we didn't know what we were doing on sometimes, writing reports or whatever, because he couldn't do it all. So it was maturing quicker than most people, and learning how to take on a bigger role.
I didn't know Greg, but I feel like I've kind of pseudo gotten to know him through this story. And Greg wore a lot of hats, man. And you explained early on, Greg was the 18 Fox. So, a lot of people may not totally understand what that means, but there's a lot that goes into that, man. You're writing intelligence reports, you're coordinating with other intelligence assets to give your team the best look of where you're at, protect you guys from threats that maybe the team can't see via human intelligence or other intelligence. Greg was the split team sergeant, and then Greg was also the commo guy. So knowing what I've learned to know about Greg, I'm sure he relied on you, you guys to do a lot of different things. Did you find yourself trying to, to help fit in where you could to help Greg? Because you just mentioned it a minute ago. I mean, Greg couldn't do everything. How did you see your role working with Greg, not only as a friend, but, as a teammate?
As a friend, just always being there, like when the stress got over, just to be that, ear to talk to or whatever, or just to talk to, like about something that's not work, to take a little break. We often did that in the ops center at night, after the last sit rep was sent out or whatever, kind of just wind down and relax. But as a teammate, for my job, I was also the camp mayor when we were back. So just making sure that, all the logistical stuff was there, anything that we needed to acquire off the local economy or from Herat or Shindan. So that was my job, but also stepping out to knowing that he couldn't do it all. Like, hey man, where can I step in? Where do you need help at? Do you need the radios, crypto put into the radios, or do you need me to go do the ABCs to make sure all the truck comps are still good? Because as the intel guy, I didn't know that role, so I couldn't really do that. Mm-hmm. But I could help him out with the commo stuff. If it was just helping doing his portion of the sit rep, or for this con op, doing that, wherever I could just help out. And that was something he taught me. He groomed him to me, and I didn't know it until years later. As we're sitting down there doing SLC, it's just always showing up for your guys. So it went full circle there,
Yeah, I think we talked about it yesterday. Sometimes we think it's the big things in life that matter, but it's really the series of small things that really matter. Greg was really this kind of, team leader, man. You guys really had two team sergeants. I mean, Carl was a team sergeant, but Greg was running the team as well. They had both made E8 together. On top of you being, a good teammate and a close friend of Greg, how did you see Greg, affect and or lead other people on the team or people that were co-located with you guys?
I really saw this with our infantry uplift kids, actually. When we first got there, we had the 82nd attached to us, which was nice because, it's a little piece of home, right? They had a really good E5. He was running everything there. And he ran a really tight ship. And, Greg saw that, our other Bravo saw that, Dylan, and, they made it a point to pour into him because they thought he had what it took to become a Green Beret. Just talking to him, trying to hey, you should come over and try out, for selection. And that goes back to everything that I've spoken about Greg leading up to this point. He saw a person's true value and what they could bring, that was bigger than them. And he was always trying just to pull that out. And I don't remember his first name, but it was Sergeant Rivera. I know he talked him into going to selection, and I know he went to 7th Group.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What infantry unit was that? Do you remember?
I just remember it was the 82nd.
Okay.
But that was what stood out to me there, and I saw myself do that later on in my career. Was it 2016? We were at JRTC. It was actually the 82nd there again, and there was this one infantry kid there who failed selection, and he really latched on to me, and he was just a good dude, and so I just started pouring into him hey man, don't quit. If that was what you wanted to do, don't quit on this. Go back and go to selection. What do you want to be? You want to be an engineer? You want to be a Bravo? And I was hey, follow this guy because he wanted to be a Bravo. And sure enough, here I am. I ran into him at Thor one day. He was hey, Sergeant Bostion, I took your advice. I made it here finally, you know, and it was just who Greg was. That, like, he was always teaching you, and you didn't even realize it.
What was that feeling like when you ran into that guy? You know, knowing that you poured a little of yourself into this dude, and it impacted this guy's career. Like, what's that feeling?
It's a great feeling. It's a great feeling. It relates to just being an instructor also, but it was a great feeling just to see, you know, someone who, you know, didn't make it at first. He could have gotten salty and just did his 4-year term in the Army and got out, right? But no, he's decided to stick it out, come back, go through the entire Q course again, and give it a try, and be successful. And he was crushing it at group. So
that's powerful, man.
Yeah.
That's a powerful story. You know, for the listeners to hear, man, don't give up. Sometimes it doesn't always work out the first try, and that's your opportunity to push even harder. Thanks for sharing that. That's a cool story. You've said Greg was always in your corner, man, giving you pep talks when things got, you know, pretty rough. Can you share a moment from that 2012 trip, maybe a quiet night or a tough day, where he pulled you through, and how those words hit you now versus maybe how they hit you back then?
Yeah, so I was at an interesting point in my life. You know, I was telling you, I was getting ready to have a child, my first child. My wife and I have been married for less than a year at this point. You know, I was wondering if I was going to get to go home for the birth of it, and I was really struggling with that, you know, internally, on top of it, just trying to focus on the team. And there was just some late night talks, you know, sitting outside underneath the stars of Afghanistan. You know, everything's brighter out there, right? And you know, he was like, "Hey Tim, like, you need to see the big picture. Like, you're about to have a child." Because I was considering, like, maybe not re-enlisting that trip and just getting out, because I didn't feel like I was coming first, you know, my family. And he was like, "You need to be able to provide for them." Like, so sure enough, I re-enlisted then, and stuck it out to 20 plus years, being able to provide for my family, but also be able to provide for others, you know, throughout my career, like you taught me. So that was the biggest thing, that, like, I was just feeling down on myself, you know, and he just pulled me out and said, "Hey, you need to look at the big picture, Tim."
As you think about that now and where you are in your life with your wife, your kids, you know, you just retired from a pretty awesome career. What does that mean to you, man?
Yeah, like, he didn't always flat out say things, you know, and Greg did put his family first, even though in the military it may not always appear that way, because you're drugged in a million different ways, right? But it was just him telling me, "Hey, you need to put your family first," and sometimes putting your family first is being able to provide for them, you know, and but also, like, enjoying them. Like, you know, he enjoyed his family, and you could see that in his podcast, but his playlist, you know, when we were working out in the gym. Like, he would have, like, some kind of, like, maybe some heavy metal on here, and then it would go to Kesha, you know, or then it would go to, like, a Disney princess theme song, because, you know, Greg loved Disney World. You know, Greg and his family loved to go to Disney World every year, and you could see that, like, he was just also grooming me, like, to understand, like, how important family is. Because I came from a broken family. You know, parents were divorced, and I didn't have any brothers or sisters. So I say I kind of didn't really truly understand how important family is. And now I truly do. Like, my family is my life, and I would do anything for them.
That's awesome. It's funny to hear you talk about the Disney story with Greg, because I have a tactical picture of him. I think it's overseas, and he's got a Disney shirt on.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah,
You'd be sitting there, you know, crushing 315 on the bench press or whatever, and then all of a sudden, like, I can't even remember, like, you know, Little Mermaid song would come on, you know.
That's cool that it's cool to have people like that in your life, whether, you know, you're on a team, on a deployment, or whatever, man. It still keeps you grounded back to the world, because sometimes, you know, the darkness of that job, whether it's the military or law enforcement, whatever, it can really suck you in. And it's good to have those anchors to, you know, pull you back out into the real world. Living in that village compound with the Afghan local police, you and Greg were out there together facing that chaos of war. What did it feel like to have him by your side in that environment? Someone you could lean on when the lines blurred between, friend and brother. And you guys had a lot of time together, man. A whole previous deployment. I mean, I don't think too many of you guys had been previously deployed together. I mean, there was obviously guys on the team that had been deployed, and some SF deployments, some big Army deployments, but you guys had a previous deployment together. So your bond was already a lot tighter probably than maybe most on the team. What was it like to have him in your corner, man?
He provided sanity. Because, you guys all know, in the military, there's a lot of BS that comes down sometimes, stuff that just throws you over the edge. And he was just that guy to always just provide sanity in your corner. I won't say talk you off the ledge, but show you the bigger picture of why this is coming down. Instead of at that point, my nickname was Red. I don't know if Dave disclosed that.
Oh yeah, when I met Dave and he kept talking about Red, I'm like, who is Red, dude? And he's like, oh, that's what we call Tim.
Yeah. So I used to be very angry, not this calm, right? Thank you, God. Yeah. But I was a very angry person in my life, and that was the common thing for 18 Charlies, for the engineers. We were just mad and pissed off all the time.
That explains Kevin. We love you, Kevin.
Yeah. He was a Charlie too, yes. But and that was who I was, and I would just, something would happen and I would just blow up yeah. I'm not going to swear, but yeah, just start cussing like a sailor and just getting mad at everybody. That happened to me when I was on a VTC with MARSOC guys up there. The camera went out and I was talking logistics and I thought we lost it. And I'm like, this dumb mother, beep, 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 beep. And then that came back on. They're all laughing. But then it's hey, I just got kicked off of all VTCs, which is a good thing. But yeah. But Greg was able to talk you down, especially me, because every little thing, I had the shortest fuse. It was a 5-second fuse, and I would just be pissed. And he was able just to talk me down, calm me down, and allow me to see past what made me angry to make sure that the job got done. Give me a clearer vision.
Did he do that for everybody? I mean, that just sounds like who he was.
Yeah, I think that's exactly who he was. Because when you're deployed, you don't always hear the full story of everything, or don't always get the whole 100% truth of everything. And he was just good at always pulling you in, letting you say what you needed to say, giving you some words of wisdom, and then just pulling you back down to where you need to be, pulling you back down to the ground.
How did all those, life and leadership lessons that, Greg was teaching you that you didn't really know he was teaching at the time, how did that change you as a leader later on?
So when I became a leader, I really started honing on that when I went to SWIC.
Can you tell everybody what SWIC is real quick?
So it's our training group where we train up new Special Forces soldiers or recruits to become Green Berets, to go out to the different throughout the regiment to the other groups. So they get trained on your engineers, weapons, how to be an officer. Your intel guys are part of it as well, in your echoes and your medics. But they're also getting a lot of other tasks that are that you're taught throughout that process. So when I had students, he's all right, how am I going to help develop these students to become leaders and also Green Berets? And a lot of that was just through personal experience. And that was the biggest way that I found myself able to connect to the students because of Greg. Because Greg would share personal experiences, or he taught me a lot of things that were teaching points of, teaching what I've learned, lessons learned and stuff like that from previous trips.
Yeah, as we've heard the story about Greg, man, and just what an awesome human being he was, personally, professionally, even emotionally, his humor, sense of humor. I hope our listeners really get a chance, especially those that maybe aren't in a leadership position, but could be in one. How important having those traits. Maybe some of it was also he had a lot more maturity. Had some deployments. He's older, and that comes with age, right? You and I've talked about that a little bit. So, all right, Tim, we're getting ready to dial it in to that day. I know this is a place you don't visit very often, but can you take me to kind of the night before? What were you guys doing the day before that incident happened with Greg?
So we went to go spend that evening with our ALP. commander. I think it was out in Bakhtabad. Actually, that's where it was.
Carl refers to it as a sleepover.
It was a sleepover. Definitely was. But there was no sleeping that took place. So we were out there just trying to build up morale with the guys that we had left still, because it was kind of starting to crumble a little bit around us. Or I won't say crumble, but people were leaving or being attacked more, and then they were getting afraid of the Taliban. So it was kind of a presence thing, but also like building rapport with them to let them know that we're there. So we went out and we were with them all evening into the morning, and then that's when we got word that our other ALP commander in Imrat, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was Imrat, was under attack. So that's where we went over there to kind of see what was up, and we heard that he was killed. So we went over there, went to his ALP checkpoint. We came up to the village. We couldn't really take our vehicles through there, so we dismounted and came out to an open field. That's where we initially took contact coming through there.
But before we dive into that part, I just want to kind of paint the overall picture. So you guys got into Afghanistan in January, and by now it's July. So when you guys got there, it was cold, not really the fighting season. But as the grass starts growing and the snow caps start melting, that's kind of when the Taliban starts popping off. You have explained, as well as your teammates have explained, you guys are running village stability operations. Something that we haven't talked about is when you guys ripped in, I think it was First Group that was there prior to you guys. It had been a kind of a quiet deployment for them, from what I understand. Is that kind of about right?
Yes, that's about right.
And then, so as you guys are there, January starts, January's there, it starts heating up. And I think Dave have kind of explained that, your partner forces in some aspects and some of the people you guys were working with in the local town, they started getting knocked off, assassinated, ALP checkpoints were getting attacked. And, one of the main reasons I understood that you guys were out at the checkpoints is, although you guys were definitely building up your partner force and, maintaining relationships, you guys were trying to bolster that checkpoint in case it came under attack, which is why you guys, didn't get any sleep. You're super modest about it, but I do want to paint the picture, for the listeners as to, why you guys were out that night. And it wasn't just, to hang out with the locals. You guys were, these checkpoints had been getting attacked, and that's exactly what happened. They didn't attack your checkpoint, but they hit another checkpoint. Am I on point with that or no?
No, you're 100% right. We call it presence patrol, right? To show our presence there, but also to bolster them up in case something does happen. And that's why we were there. So that's why we were spending time with them, checking out their security postures, to make sure that they're doing everything so that they're also, one, they're ready for the attack, and also if something does happen, we're there to help support them in that moment.
So Stance U comes to you guys, been up all night, and it's like the sun's coming up, and you guys are like, man, we get to go back to the VSP and get some actual sleep. And you guys are, from what Dave, just my understanding and talking to, you guys get ready to go home, man, go back to bed. And then the call comes out that there's another checkpoint that's under attack. What's that like for you? Like, what goes through your mind?
Yeah, it was Riza, actually. I don't know how I remembered his name. I guess because of the Wu-Tang Clan. I don't know. But it was Riza's checkpoint that got attacked, and we thought we were going home. And sure enough, like, the right thing to do is go check on these guys, right? Because they're trusting us to help them out there as well. So the right thing to do is to go check on them. And that was all that was to do. It was the only thing that was going through my mind, like, this is the right thing to do.
Are you guys hearing radio comms? Do you guys have connectivity either via TERP or how are you guys getting the information?
So it was through a TERP. They were getting phone calls. I don't remember if we had any other radios on us at the time to check that. Yep. So we were getting secondhand information through via phone calls or text messages over there.
So you guys start rolling to that checkpoint that was under attack. Mm-hmm. Is that where you guys went first?
Yes. So going over there, we're still passing our VSP, right? Because one was on this side. So one was on the original split team side that we serviced, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other one where they got attacked was on the other split team side. So we still had to roll past our VSP site, our new one where we consolidated at by this point. Mm-hmm. So we rolled past there and went out there and started formulating a plan. I'm pretty sure like there was some air going over top head, like a show force. And then you were just coming up with the best way to make it into this village, just from reports that we've gotten also, and also our know of the lay of the land before we entered, to go down to the MROT checkpoint.
What kind of information is getting passed amongst the Green Berets, the team, as you guys are starting getting closer to? I think some of the guys said, you guys could hear the pop shots or the popcorn really as you guys are on your way over. What kind of internal team communication is going on?
Yeah, so you could hear the shots being fired. And I'm pretty sure we got information that Rizza was killed before he even made it over there, and how they were just treating the area like they had overrun that ALP checkpoint and stuff like that, like they have done in the past. And usually when they overran them, they burned them to the ground, or cut all the sand back, the HESCOs open and stuff like that, and took everything out of the checkpoint.
So is there kind of internal team comms talking about, hey, what the plan is when you guys get to this next site, or what you guys are going to do? Or
so it's kind of foggy there, but I think we did like a truck side, which is the right thing to do anyways. Truck side, not anything over comms, but truck side, hey, here's our scheme maneuver of how we're going to get there, in the route.
Dave talked about just how like the area's not drivable. I think a lot of people don't understand too, like Afghanistan, you have villages, but there's like compounds, but there's, overgrown stuff and potholes, and you have, I don't know, like water beds, and and then there's berms, and so like there's no the trucks you guys have. I think were you guys on the LMTVs or?
So we had MATVs, but we usually kept those in our security positions because of the RWS system. And then we had GMVs, and then we had our side-by-sides, like our Razors. And most of the time we were out on Razors because it allowed us to get to where we needed to go, but stay off the road because they were light enough and fast enough to move us there.
What were you guys doing that day?
We had trucks actually that day.
So like those things are heavy, man,
Yeah.
and so how far out did you guys have to park, to dismount, to be able to get to where you needed to be?
So we had to park on the outside of the town, the village, to be able to walk in. So that's where we parked. We staged the trucks in a security position, and that's where we started our walk into the village. And I can't really remember how far out it was.
Yeah. What was that walk into the village like?
So we made it up to like the first building set, and then there's a wide open area. So we started kind of doing some bounding to go across. We took some shots. So immediately we peeled back, consolidated, because you don't want to be out in the open, right? And came with a better plan to get over to where we needed to get to. And at that point, it was pretty sure it was Greg and I. We got sent up to go to this one part of the building to put down some security fire, and but really there was no security fire that needed to be shot down. Put down. Everyone was able to cross this point because I guess the people that were there left.
I know Dovid was your JTAC, and he did. He had told me that he had got fast movers overhead, and I think they got a pred, so you guys were getting ISR. Did you guys have any idea what size force you guys were up against?
Not that I remember.
Did it seem like you guys were taking like an overwhelming amount of fire, or
So not on the walk in, it wasn't really that bad. It seemed like it was more just some pop shots. To like, hey, we're here, we see you. In Afghanistan, it's the murder holes. It's a little cut out of the wall, so you really can't see them shooting because you can't see a muzzle flash either because they're shooting from inside the building. So the majority of your engagements weren't even up close, and that day was the same way.
So you bound in, and I think you guys end up held up at like a compound or some kind of like, I think what Dave was saying, you guys were kind of in a compound or something where you guys sat for a while trying to figure out what was next. Is that about your recollection?
Yep.
And then what happened after that?
So we sit down there and figure out what's next. Basically what was next was like, we're just gonna head back. We kind of saw what was going on up there. I think they talked to the ALP guys that were still there, just to kind of like, hey, like, who's the next in command? What do you guys need? And then after that, like, we were RTVing, and like I can remember saying, hey guys, let's just keep it together, here, make sure our tactics are proficient for this walk back, right? And, we were walking back, the formation was, picture perfect. It was like how you're taught in the schoolhouse. Everyone was spread out good, good V formation for the overwatch. And yeah, man, like we were just sitting there walking, and like there was this little 2-foot high, fence right there in this open area, like where the buildings could look over at, and Greg was on the other side of the fence. We took, contact, and he took cover behind that wall, and like literally it was like maybe 2 inches of his head was exposed. And that's where, I looked to my right and saw that, and that's when I saw that little white smoke go through one side and out the other. And I saw him hit the ground. He was on his knees and his head was on the ground, the tripod position. And so I ran over there because I was out in the open. So I ran over to the wall, wanted to get behind some cover. I could hear bullets going by me, and also to see what my buddy needed. So that's when I got up to the wall and I laid down some quick suppressive fire, and I put him on his back. It's the one thing I'll never forget that part ever.
What is that image that's forever burned in your mind?
It's the noise. I got up there. One, I see my buddy like got shot in the head, but he was making that noise just like, and he wouldn't stop making that noise. I just felt helpless at that point. Because it's a head injury. And we've already had guys from third group who had head injuries before, and like I just saw how they were. That's a hard one to recover from, right? Mm-hmm. And even like treating, like we do cross training on the team, but like I was not cross trained to be able to treat that. So like I said, I laid down fire, got him on his back, and to get help over to him, and that's when I hit over the radio and said, "Hey guys, I didn't say call signs. I said Greg's been shot in the head." And I remember Mike Swenson saying that he thought I said that Red's been shot in the hand. But that's when I came over again. I said, "Guys, Greg has been shot in the head." And then that's when Carl ran down immediately, because he's also the team sergeant, but he was also the 18 Delta that day. And so we also had another 68 whiskey there, and they were helping trying to treat Greg, but like there was really nothing that they could do. Carl says that was one of the hardest things, like not really being able to do much because we just needed to get him off the battlefield.
In that moment, I mean, you guys are in a full-on gunfight. You just watched your close friend get shot. What was going through your head, man?
Revenge. I just wanted to get whoever was on the other end of that trigger.
There's a big to-do. I know David's stacking air. You guys are trying to get a medevac in. Carl and the other medic are trying to work on Greg. I know Dave, like his battery was almost dying, and his radio ends up having to take, Greg's battery. What's that like, man, as you guys are trying to get a medevac, for your buddy, dude, and you're hearing that these helicopters, won't land?
Yeah, it's very ironic because I always said that Greg taught us in situations, right? And I told you I was an angry guy all the time, and I said I wanted revenge. And I can just remember being there, obviously laying down fire, but I remember to turn around like, "Dave, what do you need, man?" Because I just wanted to make sure that we got Greg out of there. And I remember once everything passed over, like we weren't taking any more shots, you know, and we were starting moving him over to be medevaced, like that was like a team week event. Like that's where the training kicks in, you know, that suck that you did to become a Green Beret, like that's where it kicks in, you know, carrying his kit in one hand and then the litter in the other hand. Like it felt like I was going like 5 miles, even though I know it wasn't that long. But there was that like, it was like out of body experience. Like you were given extra strength right at that moment. At least I was. You know, just to keep on going, to get him to where we needed to get him out of there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just, you know, to continue to paint that overall picture, man, you guys have been up all night. You guys had to, you know, pretty much run in. You guys are held up. You know, you guys get in a gunfight. You do a, you know, Q-Corps style event to get him to the medevac site. You guys are smoked, man. How did it feel when you guys finally got him on that helicopter?
Well, it took a while. As I'm sure, you know, Carl has probably, you know, beaten up into you guys. It took a fast mover to say, hey, are you blind? Can you not see these people down here? I think more, it was just they were scared, personally, the helicopter, to land. But getting him in the helicopter, I mean, I was at a loss for words because at that point I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know, did I just lose my best friend? Is he going to make it? I had no idea what to expect. And there was just so much going against us that day already, like with getting him even into the helicopter because of how terrible that the medevac crew did. Yeah, I didn't know what really to expect. There was a million things going through my mind at that time. And, you know, and then like you can't just get caught up in the moment either because you still have to be switched on because you don't know what's next. Like, you know, they may get him out of here and then we may be ambushed again. And if I'm sitting here feeling sorry for myself or my buddy at the moment right now, which I want to, like, you know, we may be ambushed and more bad stuff may happen that day.
After Greg was medevaced, what was your immediate emotional response, if you can remember, man? And how did you handle continuing your duties as you just described?
There was a sense of relief getting him onto that helicopter because I know he was going to go to a better place that was going to, you know, hopefully receive better care at the time. But there still was no room for emotions to come out yet because, you know, we just lost our buddy and we just didn't know what was next. Like I didn't have the ability to let that emotionally sink in until we got back until we RTB'd and got back in and got situated into our rooms. And that's when I was fine. It was a couple hours later when I was finally just able to just let it go.
What was that feeling, that release, or whatever you call it, I guess?
I mean, I just bawled like a baby. I'm not gonna lie. There's no sugarcoating that. You know, those are just straight up tears of sadness. You know, like, you know, just seeing a guy, you know, that I love like a brother, you know, get shot. Like, I don't think I've ever experienced that before in my life. You know, I've never seen someone get shot in front of me like that. Just tears of sadness because, like, I knew like what he meant to everybody on that team. I know what he went through that trip, and then his family. You know, he had a little girl at home. He had a wife. That they were going to have to deal with this now as well.
Yeah, and as somebody who's, you know, you just come home from the birth of your own kid, you know, and Greg was a big part of your life, not just your professional life, but your personal life. How did you like weigh that emotional value for his family?
I think at the time it didn't hit me more until I got home. Because we were still there for a few more months, right? So I couldn't let everything come on yet, if that makes any sense. Because we still had a trip to do. Like that was July, and I don't think we got home until November. So we still had months ahead of us where we had to keep our head in the game, But it was when we got home, like when I realized that, because I made it a point, like I was gonna go see her. I was gonna go see Beth and Gwen, and I remember talking to my wife like, I'm gonna do it today, and then I didn't. And then the next day came, and I was like, I'm doing it today. She's like, you're doing it today. And I did it, and I was like, oh, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, you know, going up to her, like she doesn't need that right now. She needs someone strong. And I remember I cried there too, but I think we both cried together. But I did that. I went and saw her, and that's when I realized it. That's when it really fully hit me, because I could see how much pain was in, like, sorrow that she was experiencing, you know. And that was the big picture for me.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is kind of a tough question, and this is going to be a tough question for me to ask you, but I'm gonna do it, because this question is not something that a lot of people think about when stuff like this happens. You cleaned out Greg's helmet, scooping out brain matter so his wife wouldn't see it. What did it take for you to do that for him, and how does that memory sit with you now, knowing you were protecting his wife from that pain?
Looking back at it now, like I know, like she would have never saw the brain matter in there. It would have been taken care of. But in that moment, I would do it again, because that's something that she doesn't ever need to see. She doesn't need to, doesn't need to see it, smell it, whatever. Like, because she was already dealing with a lot. Like, going out to Launchstrel and then Walter Reed with him. I would do it again if I had to.
Yeah, I'd only ask that question, man, not for some kind of graphic shock value, but I think a lot of people don't understand what happens, right? We think of death and it's this faraway thing, but for those of us that have seen it up close, it has a different meaning, especially when it's somebody you know, it's a person that you've lived with, laughed with, shared life with, deployed with, became your family. It has a different meaning. So I hope you're not upset that I asked that, but there's a larger reason for it. Back at base, you just talked about being alone in your room. You said you lost it. What did that breakdown feel like? Letting it all hit you? And how did those first moments without Greg shape the weeks and months that followed as you guys stayed in combat?
Yeah, the initial part, it's weird to say that way. Like, I was sad, but it felt great to finally just be able to cry about it. Because like I was saying earlier, like, we were still there, and like I couldn't cry. I couldn't let out human emotions that needed to be expelled at that time, needed to be released. So there was a sense of, I just remember like feeling sad, but also like in a weird sense, like just happy that I could finally just cry, and just lose my composure. I'm screaming into my pillow or whatever, and just be able to sit there and cry and think about it. Like, I don't think I saw anybody for like quite a while after that, like that day. I didn't come out of my room for a few hours. Just sitting there thinking about it, like, because my wife, she's a speech therapist, and I was like, in my mind, I'm like, if he makes it through this, he's probably going to need speech therapy, and she will quit her job, and she will help him get back to whatever he needs. Like, just the different scenarios in your head, like, I'm going to show up and do whatever he needs if he makes it through this. Just going down different, courses of action like the Army teaches us, and then, for the months after, like, it was just always heavy on our heart. Like, because he was shot on the 31st, he lived until the 8th of August, and that's when he left us. So we had a few days went past, just trying to, like, not knowing, like, is he going to live? Is he going to die? What's going on with this? I feel like we were kind of built up with some instances where we were told that, hey, he was going to be okay. And that was false insecurity. I don't know if that was intentional or if there was signs showing that. So that made it like just an emotional roller coaster for leading up until his death. And then even after it, you know, we went up to Herat. I don't remember what day it was, how many days after. And, you know, they have in the military, we do stones to honor them wherever they may be at. So there was a headstone laid for Greg up there, and we had to go speak on his behalf. And, you know, since I knew Greg the longest, you know, it only made sense for me to be the guy that's, you know, delivered his eulogy up there. And, you know, that was really hard too. Like, I remember going to the guys, because I'm not good with words, if you guys can't tell yet. You know, like, I don't know what to say. Like, I don't want to sound like an idiot on here. And, you know, they were just like, hey, like, you know, just be truthful and, you know, have it come from the heart. And so that's what I did. And I mean, that was probably one of the hardest things I had to do too, you know, speaking at a friend's funeral, you know, especially with, you know, we weren't old. You know, you're supposed to live a long life. And, you know, you have a bunch of, you know, barrel-chested freedom fighters up there, and, you know, I just wanted to cry during the whole thing. You know, I just got up there and, you know, I asked the Lord, I remember that. I really wasn't like 100% true believer then, but I was like, hey, Lord, just give me the strength to make it through this, to be able to read these kind words from my friend and not cry during this, so I can, you know, show him the most respect that he deserves and, you know, give him honor.
What is your last moment that you can remember with Greg before he passed?
Not the day. Not the day of, right? Obviously. Man, I just remember the one that really stands out. I think 4th of July. I think we had like they were shooting, like having like a pistol shooting match, and of course, I was there for like 5 minutes because every single generator decided to die that day. That's like the biggest one. Like, I'll never forget the image of him with smoking a cigarette. I think he had a pinch in his mouth and nicotine patch here, just out there smoking a cigarette. Yeah, shooting at the steel targets. That might have been a few weeks after, but it's just always an image that I'll never forget the image, and it just makes me laugh because, I mean, he didn't care. I think he may have been out there, like, just out there, you know, having a good time and just being him.
Do you remember kind of one of your last conversations with him?
I don't, man.
If there's something, you know, you would have wanted to tell him the last time you talked to him, no, that could be the last time that you talked, what would you have said to him?
Yeah, I love you, dude. You're my brother. Thanks for mentoring me. You didn't have to. And thanks for helping me become the man I am today. Because yeah, he definitely impacted my life, you know, to the point where, yeah, he made me the leader I am. He showed me how to be a leader. You know, just thank you for being part of my life, for allowing me to be part of yours, to become a man.
One of the things you had told me is that, you know, Greg's wife, she helped you grieve. And it helped you to talk to her, meeting up with her, sharing some of those stories. How did those moments with her bring Greg back to you a little bit? And what did it mean to have her there when the team scattered after that trip?
So we talked obviously after that trip, and then I moved away out to different counties. So we kind of like lost ties, right? We actually rekindled it. Maybe it was 2017, where we just started like meeting up, you know, for a cup of coffee or whatever, and then talking. And I thought, like, leading up to that point, like, I thought I was good, you know, like we all just bury everything deep down inside and just keep driving on. And honestly, just getting to talk to her was like, probably some of the best therapy I could ever have. You know, laughing with her, just sharing stories about Greg, and she would share stories about, Greg that I didn't know about that were more related to them, and I would share, stories from the military, and we would just sit there for 2 hours would pass, and we'd just be talking like friends and just talking about Greg and the man who he was. I remember one instance we met in downtown Southern Pines, and I have a big truck. I parked it in there. I'm like, man, I probably shouldn't park my truck here. And Beth just came in and sat down, and then 30 seconds later, some old woman comes in. She's like, hey, does anybody have a gray Toyota Tundra? And I was like, yeah, it'd be me, ma'am. And she's like, I'm so sorry. I just hit your parked truck. And, as I told you, I was red, a 5-second fuse. I was just calm as could be. I'm like, are you okay, ma'am? And that was because of, him pouring into me. And in that situation, I was not there to get mad that day. I was there to talk to Beth. I think it was just great therapy to talk to her, and see it from her perspective as well. And then tell her the man he was when he was deployed.
If you could tell anything or say anything to her now, what would you say?
He definitely loved his family first. I know the Army pulls us in different directions, and to the spouses it may not seem like that they are the pinnacle of our life, but they were. Beth was his everything, and so was Gwen.
Thanks for sharing that. You named your son's middle name after Greg, and he knows the story. What's it like hearing your young son ask about him?
Well, unfortunately, the most time we hear Nolan Gregory is when he does something bad. But he just has so many questions, and it's great to be able to share about who Greg is and who he was, and he's never gonna die now because of that. Because my whole family knows his story, and they always ask. Even my 3-year-old son, he always asks about the bad guys and stuff like that. So it's at the time it was just out of a natural reaction in my mind, hey, I'm gonna name him Greg. But as time has gone on, it's great because he'll never die in my mind now. We forget stuff as we get older. As this interview, I'm like, oh man, I just thought about this. As we were talking earlier. But Greg will never die in my life because he's in there for the rest of my life. Because of my son.
What is that like to know that Greg's legacy lives on in your family?
It is great. It's a great feeling because he was a great man. And I always tell him, I want you guys to be like him. And my son's like, well, what was he like? And I'm like, well, he liked to laugh. He did not shy away. If the spotlight was on him, and that's who my son is. He doesn't shy away. Loves to laugh, and now he's worried about his hair. As we called Greg the Sways, the best hair in the business. He'd come aside there, and my son's the same way now. It's and I tell him, I'm like, man, you're the Sways, and he loves to own it.
That's awesome. You took a trip to Arlington Cemetery. You and I talked about it. Seeing Greg's grave with your wife, pictures, and your son crawling around. What did that day give you that the battlefield couldn't?
My wife's awesome, and so she brought those pictures for that day, and she walked me out there. She didn't forget where the gravesite was. She didn't have to go look it up. She knew where it was. So that just was a great thing. She knew where everything was. She lived that day, and she led me there. Then she sat me down at at Greg's grave, and she presented me these pictures. I had no idea. And she gave me this one. She's like, well, there's where the horse and carriage showed up. So she kind of painted that picture, of them coming in, and then she showed me a picture so I could have like face value to that day. And then, so that helped me a lot. I gave it to one of my other teammates, hoping that would help him out that way as well, because it gave me some closure, because we were robbed of that, right? Like getting to see him, and we saw him leave Afghanistan, leave Emrat. I think it's the last time.
I talked about this on one of the other episodes in this story, but a lot of people don't realize Greg was buried at Arlington National Cemetery, but you guys weren't there. You guys were still deployed, still at war, still in the gunfights, man. And that's got to be hard, man. I mean, as close as you guys were as a team, as what Greg meant to all of you that I've talked to, not being robbed of that experience to watch him, be buried in Arlington National Cemetery, which is one of our nation's, highest honors you can get for being in the military, as far as, after we pass. So
yeah, but it was, excuse me. In the military, we have a dark sense of humor, right? There's no hiding that. But when we were up there, like I remember, just like looking at his grave, seeing my son here, and then like looking over, and the guy that was behind him, his last name was Nolan. And then, there was Greg, and then like that's my son's first name is Nolan. And then, here's Greg. So it was like Nolan Gregory. I was like, man, I better go check the one over here to make sure it doesn't say Bostion. And luckily it didn't. But yeah, like it was just, I don't know, it's just very odd, right? And but I know he was probably laughing at me, about that.
You've said Greg would play a joke like putting Nolan's name next to his on that gravestone. If he's up there watching, messing with you still, what do you want to say to him about your friendship, your life now, and what he left behind?
Thank you, for grooming me, not only just to be a soldier, but to be a husband and having kids. He wasn't afraid, like I said, to have the Disney princess theme songs on his iPhone or whatever we had at that time. But like when you have kids, like embody it, embrace everything, even if it isn't very warriorish, just being there for your children is what he did. He was there, and it didn't matter if it went against his ego or not. Like, yeah, it was his family, and that's what came first. So like, yeah, just a huge thank you, for showing up for me.
One of the things we do on my podcast is we talk about mental health. That's something I've talked about a little bit about, and I think it's important to bring it up, right? Mm-hmm. You've spoken about your struggles after losing Greg, PTSDs, drinking, feeling disconnected. What lessons or advice would you offer to younger Green Berets facing similar situations today?
Don't dive into the bottle or the beer, whatever it is. It's only going to fill the hole for that time. You need to find something bigger than that. And we were just talking to some of the guys earlier. Like me, I found that later in life. My wife was telling me, my best friend that was right down the street was telling me, like, hey, like, you're not right. I was like, oh no, I'm good. But it was not until later in life where someone connected me to a church, and getting involved with the church body of being filled up. They were always there for me as well, to help fill that void with something that's everlasting. And don't be afraid to seek help. Like even if it's with a psychiatrist or just going to church for the first time. Don't be afraid of it, because it helps a lot.
Thank you for sharing that. Having served through multiple deployments, tragedy, healing, how has your definition of courage and strength evolved over time, and how did Greg influence that evolution?
So the old me, the young me, the firecracker would have saw those more as like physical attributes, strength and courage, being the strongest guy out there, which I was never the biggest one, but that's how I used to view it. But I see it more now as strength and courage. It's just, there's an emotional aspect to it too, which is more important, right? And as being, that's how it's something that's given to others, right? Those hard situations, calling somebody out for like, hey, like you're drinking too much or whatever, that you need courage to go up and confront that person, right? But it's, making those hard decisions in life, or those not making the wrong choices, like that it's easy to go off the path, and then just having mental toughness instead of physical toughness. I think that's kind of what I learned, like throughout this whole thing, this whole experience, and through him.
GWAT took a toll on all of us, man. What do you say to that dude? Lost a bunch, struggling by himself, maybe alone. One of the things we've talked about on my podcast too is, a lot of us talked about, hey, we're going to retire. I'm going to go get a ranch, 10 acres, and want everybody to leave me alone. The problem is, man, I don't think we were ever meant to be alone. We went to the military, we joined special operations or whatever it is we did in the military. And we got that sense of team, community, something bigger. That you've mentioned it and everybody else has mentioned it in this series, how important the team was and being a part of something bigger. And then people go off and all of a sudden one day they're just by themselves. And then, they don't have a tribe, they don't have anything. What do you tell that person that's isolated themselves and, really they're not part of a tribe no more because they've, kind of taken that step to pull themselves out of it and they're in a dark spot.
Yeah. So I'm actually looking for my ranch right now.
I think we all are.
But that's the one good thing about this 3424. Pretty active. We have our group chat. You've pretty much met. You didn't meet everybody, but you met a lot of us, right? And they're there for you. Just with the text message or whatever. And it's an open line. Like if something's going on, you can say it, and somebody will be there for you. And like you have friends, and you know who they are, and you just maintain those communications. And it can go like even if it's a month goes by, if it's one of your true friends, like they know you'll be there for them whenever, and like that's the biggest thing is like. Don't just go get a brand new phone when you get out with a new phone number and drop every single contact, because one day someone that you may not even known that you impacted may call you. I've had that happen with a real close friend of mine. Didn't know anything was going on, but he called me out of the blue, and he's like, "Hey Tim, I'm in a bind right now. Can you come get me?" And like it's the same thing. Like you have to have that same team mentality once you retire, because everybody has demons. Doesn't matter if they were a Vietnam vet, like I was telling you, my neighbor down the street, he's 80-something years old. He still says he battles those demons. And that's why we need to maintain, good communications and make sure that everyone knows that we're available whenever.
How do you approach that conversation? And I know there's an art to it. Not every situation is the same, but that dude that's off on the deep end, man, drinking, you mentioned people told you, hey man, you're not right. And, you have this person in your life that you've served with or whatever, and they're not right. How do you balance that conversation? What do you say?
If they mature me, now would try to point them to Jesus. Because everything's in the Bible, right? That's going to point you to the direction that you need to go in life. So that's where I would try to push them that way. But it doesn't have to be said. It's through your actions, right? And the actions is showing up for them when they need it. Whether it's just so they can vent. It could be a 2 o'clock in the morning phone call, and your wife's like, "Who's calling you this late?" "Oh, it was a friend that needed to vent." "Okay, take care of him." That's what it means right there. It's just being there.
Awesome. In your opinion, what should the audience of this podcast series remember most about Master Sergeant Gregory Trent, not just as a soldier, man, but as a man?
You know, Greg lived life to the fullest, right? I'm not saying he was a wild man or anything like that, but like, he was passionate about everything he did in life, and you know, passionate about his work, but passionate about his family. And you know, today's world, it's all about that work-life balance, and he displayed how to have that even when there was more work balance over life, right? I mean, that's who he was. Like, everything that he did was 100% in anything that he did. And I mean, it's a great role model to be like, right? Like, you know, people say they want to be like Mike, but like, he was just a sports player. You know, Greg, he was a soldier, he was a warrior. He gave it all for his country. You know, and like, that's what I tell my son. I was telling him, like, hey, this is the guy you want to be like when you grow up.
What do you think Greg would want people to learn or understand from his story and sacrifice?
I'm thinking of that one, actually.
Ain't nothing wrong with
Yeah. It's a hard question to
Yeah.
answer.
And then, you know, man, this is going to be my last question for you. Is there anything we haven't touched upon today that you feel is essential for honoring Greg's memory in the story?
So as I said, you know, Greg loved everybody, right? Like, as we talked about, you have your family, and you have the team family, and I just think Greg would be proud of everybody that was in his life and where they're at today. Like, you know, seeing where his daughter is now, seeing how Beth is still carrying on his name, his tradition, right? And then seeing where the guys on the team have ventured off to throughout their career and after within retirement. Yeah, it's just something I've been thinking about that a lot lately. I think he would just be so proud of the mentor that he's put in, and to see how we blossomed.
Yeah. Well, I said it when we started, and I'll say it again. Thank you, man. You were the first person I talked to. You were the pivot point for this project. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been able to talk to anybody else. It was kind of you meeting me, which I kind of felt was like this initial vetting.
Yeah.
Who am I? Why do I deserve to be able to even talk about Greg's name? You weren't there. And then we talked for a while, and I got a little bit of your buy-in, and then I would text you, hey man, what about so-and-so? Or do you think, Carl would talk to us? Or, can you put me in contact with Dave? And now that I know there was a group, text message, I know my name was thrown around on that text message, but I just want to thank you. If it wasn't for you, the story wouldn't have happened. And this is, as I've talked about with my production team, this is a worthy story. Not only about Greg's life and who Greg was and what Greg sacrificed, but your team, man. Like, I've really gotten to know, and our team has gotten to know some of these larger than life characters, and even, Kevin on the sister team, and kind of their love and their bond for your team through this whole thing. And I think Greg would really smile, man. I think, Greg's death was really a lightning rod for all you guys to be better, get better, have each other later on in life. Because, a lot of the things we've talked about on this channel is the mental health struggle and what happens after that transition. And, when you leave this whole life behind and go on to the next life, sometimes people do great at it and sometimes people struggle. Yeah. And knowing that Greg's still that lightning rod that keeps you guys together and you guys still have each other, it's been really cool on the outside watching you guys connect and talk and interact. And, Carl's still the team sergeant, here in the back overseeing us.
Yeah.
Carl's been here the entire time, still being the team sergeant, comes in the morning, comes in the afternoon, checks on us as he's checking on you guys. Like, it's still awesome to see. And it was cool just for a small moment for us to be, a part of this community you guys have. So thank you for giving me that. Thank you for, giving the world that. Who knows where the story's going to end up. So again, man, thank you for being who you are, for being authentic and being genuine during this discussion. And I just can't thank you enough. For all you guys out there, man, I hope you guys continue, as we continue to tell this story. And thanks for tuning in and for listening, and for celebrating Greg's life and his sacrifice with us. America is great. Our military is strong. We're still the best fighting force in the nation, and a lot of that has to do with the sacrifices that people have made, like Greg and like many others. So in the meantime, you guys stay safe out there, and if you can't be safe, be violent out here.
Whew.
Awesome.